It is 9 p.m. here at the North Charleston Coliseum and Performing Arts Center in South Carolina. Welcome to the 6th Republican presidential debate of the 2016 campaign here on the Fox Business Network. I'm Neil Cavuto alongside my friend and co-moderator, Maria Bartiromo.
Tonight, we are working with Facebook to ask the candidates the questions voters want answered. And according to Facebook, the U.S. election has dominated the global conversation, with 131 million people talking about the 2016 race. That makes it the #1 issue talked about on Facebook last year worldwide.
Now, the 7 candidates on the stage tonight were selected based on their standing in 6 national polls, as well as polls in the early voting states of Iowa and New Hampshire. Those standings determining the position on the stage of the candidates tonight. And here they are. Businessman Donald Trump. Texas Senator Ted Cruz. Florida Senator Marco Rubio. Neurosurgeon Ben Carson. New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. Former Florida Governor Jeb Bush. And Ohio Governor John Kasich.
Tonight's rules are simple. Up to 90 seconds for each answer, 1 minute for each follow-up response. And if a candidate goes over the allotted time, you'll hear this. So let's get started. Candidates. Jobs and growth, 2 of the biggest issues facing the country right now. In his State of the Union address earlier this week, the president said, quote, "We have the strongest, most durable economy in the world. And according to our Facebook research, jobs is one of the biggest issues resonating across the country, including here in South Carolina. The president is touting 14 million new jobs and an unemployment rate cut in half. The president says that anyone who claims America's economy is in decline is peddling fiction. Senator Cruz, what do you see that he doesn't?"
Well, Maria, thank you for that question, and let me say thank you to the state of South Carolina for welcoming us. Let me start. I want to get to the substance of the question on jobs, but I want to start with something. Today, many of us picked up our newspapers, and we were horrified to see the sight of 10 American sailors on their knees with their hands on their head. In that State of the Union, President Obama didn't so much as mention the 10 sailors that had been captured by Iran. President Obama is preparing to send $100 billion or more to the Ayatollah Khamenei. And I'll tell you, it was heartbreaking. But the good news is the next commander-in-chief is standing on this stage. And I give you my word, if I am elected president, no serviceman or servicewoman will be forced to be on their knees, and any nation that captures our fighting men and women will feel the full force and fury of the United States of America. Now on to your substantive question. The president tried to paint a rosy picture of jobs. And you know, he's right. If you're a Washington lobbyist, if you make your money in and around Washington, things are doing great. The millionaires and billionaires are doing great under Obama, but we have the lowest percentage of Americans working today of any year since 1977. Median wages have stagnated, and the Obama-Clinton economy has left behind the working men and women of this country. The reason all of us are here is we believe we should be fighting for the working men and women of this country and not Washington, D.C.
Thank you, sir.
Governor Kasich, we are not even 2 weeks into this stock trading year, but think about it, investors have already lost $1.6 trillion in market value. That makes it the worst start to a new year ever. Many worry that things could get even worse and that banks and financial stocks are particularly vulnerable. And if this escalates like it did back when Barack Obama first assumed the presidency, what actions would you take if the same thing happens all over again, just as, in this example, you are taking over the presidency?
Well, look, it takes three things basically to grow jobs, and I've done it when I was in Washington when we had a balanced budget, had 4 years of balanced budgets, paid down $500 billion of debt, and our economy was growing like crazy. It's the same thing that I did in Ohio. It's a simple formula. Common sense regulations, which is why I think we should freeze all federal regulations for 1 year, except for health and safety. It requires tax cuts, because that sends a message to the job creators that things are headed the right way. And if you cut taxes for corporations and you cut taxes for individuals, you're going to make things move, particularly the corporate tax, which is the highest, of course, in the world. But in addition to that, we have to have fiscal discipline. We have to show that we can march to a balanced budget. And when you do that, when you're in a position of managing regulations, when you reduce taxes, and when you have fiscal discipline, you see the job creators begin to get very comfortable with the fact that they can invest. Right now, you have taxes that are too high. You have regulations. I mean, come on, they're affecting everybody here, particularly our small businesses. They're in a position where they're smothering people. And I mean, are you kidding me? We're nowhere close to a balanced budget or fiscal discipline. Those three things put together are going to get confidence to job creators, and you will begin to see wages rise. You will begin to see jobs created in a robust economy. And how do I know it? Because I've done it. I did it as the chairman of the Budget Committee working with Senator Domenici, and I've done it in the state of Ohio as the chief executive. Our wages are growing faster than the national average. We're running surpluses, and we can take that message and that formula to Washington to lift every single American to a better life.
Thank you, Governor.
We know that recent global events have many people worried. Iran detaining American sailors, forcing them to apologize, North Korea and its nuclear ambitions, an aggressive China, and a Middle East that continues to deteriorate. Not to mention, ISIS is getting stronger. Governor Christie, sometimes it seems the world is on fire. Where and when should a president use military action to restore order?
Well, Maria, I'm glad to have heard from you in the summary of that question about what's going on in the world, because Tuesday night I watched Story Time with Barack Obama, and I got to tell you, it sounded like everything in the world was going amazing, you know? Fact is, there's a number of things that the next president's going to have to do to clean up this mess. The first thing is we have to strengthen our alliances around the world. And the best way to do that is to start talking to our allies again and having them be able to count on our word. Lots of people will say lots of different things about me in this campaign and others. But the one thing they've never said about me is that I'm misunderstood. And so when we talk to our allies and we give them our word in a Christie administration, they'll know we're going to keep it. Next, we have to talk to our adversaries. And we have to make sure they understand the limits of our patience. And this president, given what Ted said right at the beginning, he's absolutely right. It's absolutely disgraceful that Secretary Kerry and others said in their response to what's going on in Iran that this was a good thing. It showed how the relationship was getting better. The president doesn't understand, and by the way, neither does Secretary Clinton, and here's my warning to everybody out in the audience tonight. If you're worried about the world being on fire, you're worried about how we're going to use our military, you're worried about strengthening our military, and you're worried most of all about keeping your homes and your families safe and secure, you cannot give Hillary Clinton a third term of Barack Obama's leadership. I will not do that. If I'm the nominee, she won't get within 10 miles of the White House.
Just to be clear, Governor, where and when would you use military action?
Military action, Maria, would be used when it was absolutely necessary to protect American lives and protect American interests around the world. We are not the world's policemen. But we need to stand up and be ready. And the problem, Maria, is that the military is not ready either. We need to rebuild our military, and this president has let it diminish to a point where tin pot dictators like the mullahs in Iran are taking our Navy ships. It is disgraceful, and in the Christie administration, they would know much, much better than to do that.
Governor Bush, the president just told the nation 2 nights ago that America's back, and that the idea that our enemies are getting stronger or that this country is getting weaker, well, it's just rhetoric and hot air. Now, other Democrats go even further, sir, saying Republicans even suggesting such comments actually embolden our enemies. I guess they would include you. What do you say?
Well, first of all, the idea that somehow we're better off today than the day that Barack Obama was inaugurated President of the United States is totally an alternative universe. The simple fact is that the world has been torn asunder. Think about it. With grandiose language, the president talks about red lines and nothing to follow it up, talks about ISIS being the JV team. They form a caliphate the size of Indiana with 35 to 40,000 battle-tested terrorists. He's missing the whole point that America's leadership in the world is required for peace and stability. In the crowd today is Major General James Livingston, who's the co-chairman of my campaign here in South Carolina, a Medal of Honor recipient. I've learned from him that what we need to achieve is peace through strength, which means we need to rebuild the military. In this administration, every weapon system has been gutted. In this administration, the force levels are going down to a level where we can't even project force. Our friends no longer think we have their back, and our enemies no longer fear us. And we're in a much different position than we should be. And for the life of me, I have no understanding why the president thinks that everything is going well. Terrorism is on the run. China, Russia is advancing their agenda at warp speed, and we pull back. As President of the United States, I will be a commander-in-chief that will have the back of the military. We will rebuild the military to make sure that it is a solid force, not to be the world's policeman, but to make sure that in a peaceful world, people know that the United States is there to take care of our own national interests and take care of our allies.
So I take it from that you do not agree with the president.
No, and worse yet, to be honest with you, Hillary Clinton would be a national security disaster. Think about it. She wants to continue down the path of Iran, Benghazi, the Russian reset, Dodd-Frank, all the things that have gone wrong in this country. She would be a national security mess. And that is wrong. And you know what? Here's the problem. If she gets elected, she's under investigation with the FBI right now. If she gets elected, her first 100 days, instead of setting an agenda, she might be going back and forth between the White House and the courthouse. We need to stop that.
Senator Rubio, the president says that ISIS doesn't threaten our national existence like Germany or Japan did back in World War II, that the terror group is nothing more than twisted souls plotting attacks in their garages. But the House Homeland Security Committee recently said that over 1,000 ongoing investigations of homegrown extremism in 50 states. So how do you define the threat? Well, like Germany then, or dangerous nutcases now?
Yeah, I would go, first of all, one step further in this description of Hillary Clinton. She wouldn't just be a disaster. Hillary Clinton is disqualified from being Commander-in-Chief of the United States. Someone who cannot handle intelligence information appropriately cannot be Commander-in-Chief, and someone who lies to the families of those 4 victims in Benghazi can never be President of the United States. Now, on the issue of Barack Obama does not believe that America is a great global power. Barack Obama believes that America is an arrogant global power that needs to be cut down to size. And that's how you get a foreign policy where we cut deals with our enemies like Iran, and we betray our allies like Israel, and we gut our military, and we go around the world like he has done on 10 separate occasions and apologized for America. He doesn't understand the threat in ISIS. He consistently underestimates it, but I do not. There is a war against ISIS, not just against ISIS, but against radical jihadist terrorists, and it is a war that either they win or we win. When I'm President of the United States, we are going to win this war on ISIS. The most powerful intelligence agency in the world is going to tell us where they are. The most powerful military in the world is going to destroy them. And if we capture any of them alive, they are getting a one-way ticket to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, and we are going to find out everything they know.
Thank you, Senator.
Dr. Carson, the president says he does not want to treat ISIS as a foreign army. But ISIS is neither a country nor a government. How do you attack a network that does not respect national borders?
Well, I'm very happy to get a question this early on. I was going to ask you to wake me up when the time came. I find it really quite fascinating some of the president's proclamations. The fact of the matter is he doesn't realize that we now live in the 21st century, and that war is very different than it used to be before. Not armies massively marching on each other and air forces, but now we have dirty bombs, and we have cyber attacks, and we have people who will be attacking our electrical grid. And, we have a whole variety of things that they can do, and they can do these things simultaneously. And we have enemies who are obtaining nuclear weapons that they can explode in our exo-atmosphere and destroy our electric grid. I mean, just think about a scenario like that. They explode the bomb. We have an electromagnetic pulse. They hit us with a cyber attack simultaneously and dirty bombs. Can you imagine the chaos that would ensue at that point? He needs to recognize that those kinds of things are, in fact, an existential threat to us. But here's the real key. We have the world's best military, even though he's done everything he can to diminish it. And the fact of the matter is, if we give them a mission and we don't tie their hands behind their back, they can get it accomplished.
Mr. Trump, at the State of the Union, the President pointed to a guest who was a Syrian refugee, you might recall, whose wife and daughter and other family members were killed in an air attack. Now, he fled that country seeking asylum here, ultimately ended up in Detroit, where he's now trying to start a new life. The President says that that doctor is the real face of these refugees and not the one that you and some of your colleagues on this stage are painting. That you prefer the face of fear and terror, and that you would refuse to let in anyone into this country seeking legitimate asylum. How do you answer that?
It's not fear and terror, it's reality. You just have to look today at Indonesia, bombings all over. You look at California, you look frankly at Paris, where there's the strictest no-gun policy of any city anywhere in the world. And you see what happens, 130 people dead with many to follow. They're very, very badly wounded. Some will follow. And you look around and you see what's happening. And this is not the case. When he introduced the doctor, very nice, everything perfect, but that's not representative of what you have in that line of migration. That could be the great Trojan horse. It could be people that are going to do great, great destruction. When I look at the migration, I looked at the line, I said it actually on your show recently, where are the women? There look like very few women, very few children, strong, powerful men, young, and people are looking at that and they're saying, what's going on? You look at the kind of damage that two people that got married, they were radicalized, they got married, they killed 15 people, and actually 14, going to be probably 16. But you look at that and you take a look, a good strong look, and that's what we have. We owe $19 trillion. Our country's a mess, and we can't let all these people come into our countries and break our borders. We can't do it.
Senator Cruz, the New York Times is reporting that you failed to properly disclose $1 million in loans from Goldman Sachs and Citibank. During your Senate race, your campaign says it was inadvertent. $1 million is inadvertent?
Well, Maria, thank you for passing on that hit piece on the front page of the New York Times. You know, the nice thing about the mainstream media, they don't hide their views. The New York Times a few weeks back had a columnist who wrote a column saying anybody but Cruz. Had that actually that same columnist wrote a column comparing me to an evil demonic spirit from the movie It Follows that jumps apparently from body to body possessing people. So, you know, the New York Times and I don't exactly have the warmest of relationships. Now, in terms of their really stunning hit piece, what they mentioned is when I was running for Senate, unlike Hillary Clinton, I don't have masses of money in the bank, hundreds of millions of dollars. When I was running for Senate, just about every lobbyist, just about all of the establishment opposed me in the Senate race in Texas. And my opponent in that race was worth over $200 million. He put a $25 million check up from his own pocket to fund that campaign. And my wife Heidi and I We ended up investing everything we own. We took a loan against our assets to invest it in that campaign to defend ourselves against those attacks. And the entire New York Times attack is that I disclosed that loan on one filing with the United States Senate that was a public filing, but it was not on a second filing with the FEC. Both of those filings were public, and yes, I made a paperwork error disclosing it on one piece of paper instead of the other, but if that's the best hit the New York Times has got, they better go back to the well.
Thank you, sir.
All right, well, we are just getting started here in South Carolina, and there is a lot to get to, including things like gun rights, the national debt, and the sometimes nasty war words between, well, a couple of these fellows up here. More to this.